I'm going to begin with a screen share, which will take us to a couple of writing prompts, because I want us to begin by reflecting on our own linguistic backgrounds. We often appear to be monolingual as the result of cultural conformity and assimilation. And so, in my own particular family, my grandfather's first two languages were Yiddish and German. And he came here to the US when he was about 8. And it was very important for him to fit in. And he became a movie projectionist. And he would practice speaking because he didn't want any hint of Eastern European accent. He didn't want to be marked as Jewish because he was escaping persecution. And so as I was growing up, it was very important to him to train me to speak English and to fit in. And in my family, we've lost that linguistic heritage. And one of my goals is to learn Yiddish so I can reconnect with some of that. And so I would like us to begin by reflecting on where we are from and specifically thinking about who our ancestors are. Can you read these prompts? I can also put them in the chat if that's easier. And so you can write about these questions on your own privately, or if you're comfortable, you can share in the chat where your ancestors are from, the languages and the dialects that your ancestors speak. And if you try to listen to your ancestors today, what do you hear? I hear my grandfather sometimes slipping into Yiddish saying, a bissel of mashuga, talking usually about me or my brother doing something crazy. When you listen to your ancestors, what do you feel and what do you smell? I smell a dish that my grandmother made called mama lega. It's a Romanian porridge that my great grandmother taught her to make, and it has cornmeal and sour cream and cheese and scallions. What do you feel and smell and touch? What do you learn? My grandmother then taught me how to cook. What questions do you have about your ancestors? Not all of us have the privilege of knowing where our ancestors have come from. And when you listen to your ancestors, what do you become? Does it change us if we take this pause to think about the past and how the past inheres in the present? And I can't see the chat. If someone could signal if there's any chatting.
So we should write in the chat.
If you're comfortable, please do.
Okay.
I'm going to stop the share and I'll drop these questions in the chat as well if you would like access to them. Thank you to those who shared. And I hope that whether you felt comfortable sharing or not, this helped you think a little bit about your background. And part of the work of anti racism is for us to be intentional about our backgrounds and look at the cultural diversity that we all bring to these conversations. I'm going to turn things over now to Patty McKinnon, who will talk with us about a project that she has been doing with the help of some Bates students on multilingual poetry writing. And then we will be treated to some of the work that her students have created.
So just a minute, I'm going to share a slideshow that I created. So let me open that up, and that will just take just a second. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so Stephanie, you can see this now. Everyone can see this, the slideshow.
Yes, looks great. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Bienvenido. Salam alaikum. It's nice to be here. I'm going to share the creative work that my students from Lewiston High School have completed over the past 2 years in collaboration with Bates College students. And my high school students are all English language learners. They're a unique generation of Maine students with knowledge of 2 or more cultures and often several languages. And at Lewiston High School, we have a great diversity in our student population, with about 30% of our students having come from numerous African countries. So this makes up a total of over 300 of our over 1,500 student body. And let me go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, through our Bates Lewiston High School collaboration, my students have created poems that provide them a voice to express who they are, where they come from, and how they want to be known. So the first set of poems is about students expressing where they are from. And when people ask, where are you from? We may say the city, the state, and perhaps a country from which we come. But where we are from, as we just demonstrated with Stephanie's writing prompt, it's so much more than that. And in the poems the students read, they share with you where they are from in terms of memories, sounds, smells, sights, language, and loved ones, revealing so much more than the geographical location from which they come. In the second set of poems, the Just Because poems, students identify what makes them who they are, for example, groups or categories to which they belong. And then they critically view how others in society might erroneously or negatively see them, or the groups of which they are part. And in their poems, they debunk those misconceptions or stereotypes. And these self-reflections are challenging even for seasoned people. But the teenagers persevered in reflecting deeply and wrestling with sometimes uncomfortable emotions. And after several revisions and the patient support from Bates mentors, my students embraced and celebrated their unique identities, and they truly became proud poets. Let's see. Okay, so as stated in the Girona Manifesto on Linguistic Rights, all individuals learn to speak in the heart of a community that gives them life, language, culture, and identity. As such, in the students' poems, you will see code meshing or the inclusion of their mother tongues and discourse communities as part of where they are from and who they are. So I'm going to stop here so Stephanie can share the student poem recitations, and then I'll return to speak about the writing process and some reflections about the activity. In the poems you're about to hear, I imagine you will notice the strength, the pride, the beauty, and the ownership of the students' heritages and their unique experiences. And I hope you enjoy the mosaic of their heartfelt voices. So here is the recitations. I'll stop sharing so Stephanie can share. Okay.
Thank you. And we'll be sharing 10 minutes of the poetry so you know how long. I think we have close to 20 minutes of them reciting their work, but we want to have time for us to talk with you about how how mostly Patty created the prompts that made this happen. And so here goes.
My name is Joshua Nsenga and I am from Uganda. And the title of my poem is Corn. I am from corn, smooth and young and rough and old and hard. I am from the big mud farm home with goats in the kitchen. Silver mill roof shades that drown with falling rain. I am from open fire cooking and hardworking potato farmers. From brother, I am from bright red roses, wild and unattended to. From brother Mahoro and dad Nsenga. I am from listening. I am from the Christian church in soccer games. I am from wa familia wa Kristo wenyewe wanapenda kuomba Mungu sana. I am from listening to Jehovah Witnesses preaching in the street. I am from Uganda and Congo. Potatoes, rice, beans, corn, and cassava. From the dad who let me buy whatever I wanted in the store, and from the mom who would never let me buy unnecessary things. Potato, I am from rice and corn crops I planted sustainably always. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zoe. Here's my poem. Looking back, I'm from Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, from which country and chicken tacos. I'm from very pictures of cute meat stuck on my bedroom walls. Bright botanical flowers in living room paintings. I'm from the hibiscus flower, pink and incredibly fragrant. I'm from Sunday church and big family birthday parties. From Mount Mundu and then Minganza. Firetree decoration and loud Christmas meals with everything I could eat. From parents saying, "Nukuda cyane ishuri ni ryiza. Work hard in class, school is important." I'm from the beach at the blue freezing cold lake, picnicking on the shore and listening to the hip hop song on fire. I'm from my mother's minced meat spaghetti, my father tasty chicken. From 5 and 6 years old, playing hide and seek at night on the streets. The beautiful white, green, and red flowers of my mother's backyard garden. From hearing the choo choo train at midnight. I'm from memories of Grandpa in Burundi. I miss you and I love you, Grandpa.
I'm from the Cocomelon Children's Song, from crying about my brother in heaven, from laughing how life can change. I am from carrying babies, baby food everywhere, sticky and gelatinous, from the baobab tree, beautiful flower that open at night, with fruit that grow a foot high is where I am from. I'm from bus drivers screaming, "Kuka, kuka," from women with baby tie on their back, carrying on their head colorful plastic tub of fish, yelling all together, "Ielambule carapawe." I'm from Pedrinha, a game little kid play on the street, from the music Kuduro and Tarraxinha. From my mom saying, "Femme sage bâtit sa maison." I'm from fighting with boys, with my mom saying, Pas de procurar problema, vou te bater. I'm from Zambia, Ekba Congo food and waste dance. From this beautiful African culture I am from. Thank you.
My name is Jane, and I wrote a poem about Angolan mangoes, and I hope you guys like it. I'm from Luanda, Angola. The green palm trees lining city streets. From Rio Kwanza, Kwanza, my country currency. From the winding Serra da Leba mountain province of Namibia. The reddish-orange Acacias Grova Street in Benguela City. The sunset of Ilha de Luanda Beach. From the country Portuguese colonization in 1975, from mineral and petroleum, from the woman who worked hard, early, every day carrying red, green, blue, and white baskets on their heads, from my mom, Yolinda Sandra, and my dad, Paulo Domingos, from take care of yourself, and God will take care of you, from the Palanca Negra gigantic fictional animal, soft corn used for food, Angolan music, kizomba, semba, and kuduro. From innocent people get killed for no reason, teens doing drugs, sick kids in the hospital, many who die without proper care. From kids climbing up on the mango trees for sweet, juicy mangoes, and my neighbor screaming, "Stop stealing my mangoes!"
My name is Tarsila Gonçalves, and today I'll be presenting the poem, The Mask. I am a teen girl with double personality. I wonder how it feels to be happy on the inside. I hear that girl is too cheerful. I see the black side of my mask whenever I look in the mirror. I want to destroy my darkness. I am a teen girl with double personality. I pretend to see everything pretty purple and yellowish yellow. I touch my mom's soft hands whenever I close my eyes. I worried one day I'll never taste my father's fish water again. I cry always when I am alone in my room. I am a teen girl with double personality. I understand that life is like a roller coaster. I say, Tarsila, Deus sabe o que faz. I see my friends and my darkness disappears. I dream to be content and spread all love and joy wherever I go. I try to pull a smile on my face, even when I feel like punching someone. I hope one day my parents will enjoy me in the US. I am a teen girl with double personality.
Hi, my name is Rahima, and I'm gonna be doing just because pop. Okay, just because I'm an immigrant doesn't mean I don't hang out with friends, like sports, or use Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. Doesn't mean I should not enjoy my life. Doesn't mean I'm a loser. Ndubyiruko n'abandi banyamerika bose. Just because I'm black doesn't mean I can't have freedoms like you. Doesn't mean I can't walk the same path as you. Doesn't mean I should be separated from you. Turangana. Well, just because I came from a given refugee camp doesn't mean people should treat me like I'm regular. Doesn't mean I'm poor and have no education. Doesn't mean I have no respect for others. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm weak. Doesn't mean I can't do what any man can do. Doesn't mean I like makeup. Fitimbaraga kubera ko ndi umugore. Thank you.
My name is Deolinda Dash, and I'll be reading the poem Just Because. Just because I'm living in America doesn't mean I forgot my mom telling me. Não importa onde você ir ou quem você se tornar, não te esqueças de onde você vem, nem a sua origem. Doesn't mean I don't miss drinking hot tea after dancing in the rain, barefoot. I I miss skating under the sunset of Ilha de Luanda. But I know I'll see you again, there, Mother Africa. Just because I'm from Angola doesn't mean I'm FOB. Doesn't mean I'm illegal. I am proud of my race. E sou tolerante a todas as religiões e nações. Just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I can't love other girls. Doesn't mean I need to wear dresses or red lipstick. I can love whoever I want, and I can be loved because love is love. And I feel sad too. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean I'm afraid to use my voice. Doesn't mean I need to be scared when I see a cop walking or driving around in my town. I am not afraid to use my voice and speak up for my rights. I deserve equality like everyone else. Thank you.
So we can pause for a moment, and then Patty McKinnon will share with us the process that led to the creation of these poems, and then the Bates students will talk about their experiences working with Mrs. McKinnon and her students. And then I will briefly talk about some of the research that informed this project, and we will take your questions.
Well, thank you for that pause because I think we needed that. They were emotional. So thank you. Yeah, I'm touched every time I hear them, no matter how many times I hear them. So, yes, I'm going to talk about move in now to the scaffolding process, really the process of making this writing activity approachable for our students. So I will talk about kind of share the template that I used for where I am from. And I adapted a template from something I found online. This type of poem, Where I Am From, is a common writing activity. And, certainly every teacher will adapt it to their particular situation, their group of students. But this was a template that I used and adapted. So I'm going to share that with you. I really liked the components. It has, 4 components that I thought were very, very essential. So first of all, the first component was gathering ideas for the writing. And that's always, a critical stage for any writing, particularly for new writers. And the Bates students helped a lot with that, and having discussions and listening to students one-on-one oftentimes. And this year particularly, that was in breakout rooms on Zoom. So some of the topics, they were asked to choose from a number of suggested topics, such as memories from when they were little, or words or phrases that they often heard maybe a grandfather or a mother say. A lot of our students are very religious, whether they're Muslim or Christian, so maybe a religious experience or a favorite family tradition or foods. And actually in those poems, you heard several of them refer to different foods. So that was the first aspect, where they would found the topics. And then they had a graphic organizer where they would take notes on the topics that they chose, anything that they remembered about those specific topics. And they also were asked to interview an adult family member about those same topics. And as it says here, the family heritage starts with previous generations. So that was an important aspect. And the family members added a lot to their memories, and they had a lot to add. So I'll move down here to where the graphic organizer is to give you a better idea of what that looked like. So the organizer, the students would write in their topics and notes that they had under the me column, and then notes that the adult family member had about that specific topic. And that helped the students a lot to get started generating ideas. Then they drafted their poem. Publishing their poem was a very important aspect, and so sharing their poem with a larger audience, a authentic audience. And students did that several times over the last 2 years. They shared with a authentic audience at Martin Luther King Day with Bates College, and they also published their work we have a high school magazine, the Collage magazine. And so that went out, was distributed to our student population of 1,500. And they were very proud of that. And then equally important was the reflection on their poem. So reflection of their own writing process, their own experience, and reflection on the experience of listening to others. So I share this link with you, and in case you want to use it, adapt it for your own teaching. And then there is there's a template here for actually writing the poem. And it certainly doesn't need to be strictly followed. Not many of my students strictly followed it, but it is a really nice crutch for students that need something to get started. It gives them a lot of confidence to get started. And I think this is the original poem, Where I'm From, by George Ella Lyon. And there's plenty of examples online that you can use and that I used to introduce students to the writing activity. And in fact, there's also a song that I really liked, and I included in the slideshow here. It's Looking Back song. It's really kind of a very high school, teenage friendly song by Lauryn Hill, and lots of imagery growing up in New York City. And I thought that was a nice song to analyze as a kind of getting pre-writing type of activity. So that's kind of how we approached this activity. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. So here, I wanted to talk about the importance of writing activities like these. And a foremost benefit of this that I certainly find is that this type of activity gives teachers a profound opportunity to build strong teacher-student rapport and to foster a sense of community in the classroom and beyond. And knowing students, knowing them as learners and as individuals, it's a foundation of good teaching. And it's something we as teachers sometimes let, covering the content overshadow. And we certainly can't teach what we don't know, and that includes our students. So, and then also, this year with the buzzword has all been about social and emotional learning, and this type of writing activity certainly provides a, incredible creative means for addressing that. So I think I'd like to move in next and just talk about some reflections and the fact that this activity completely embraces the power of listening. And this is something that Stephanie talks a lot about. And so it embraces the power of listening between Bates and high school students, among high school students, between teacher and students, and within our broader community. And as a result of these writing projects, students came to better appreciate their family and cultural ties. And that's so critical to one's identity and self-esteem. And engaging in the interviews with the family members from Africa was an opportunity for parents and others to be partners in the students' education, which, as we know with teenagers, they're often excluded from that. And it was also a chance to strengthen familial bonds between teenagers and older family members. So as part of the reflection process, I had students, write down some of their feelings. And I'm going to just read off some of these with you. And here is a Collage magazine, a picture of that where students publish some of their work. But students answered, basically this was a prompt, they answered that this activity and writing and listening to these poems were important, or they liked it because we're talking about ourselves. It tells the story behind my life, my skin color. It helps us to relax and communicate to each other, to understand. I feel so proud, I feel like a real author. I like it when they speak their home language and the way they show their emotions. I feel happy and proud students still remember their past problems and hear them using their mother birth language. It helps all people to not be racist. Some people say bad things about us without knowing us. So I think one of the things that was really noteworthy, well, one of many things, is that students overwhelmingly expressed the enjoyment of hearing the mother tongues of their fellow students in the poetry. So as a final word, I just would like to, just say that the collaboration with Bates was a strong reciprocal learning process, and we all benefited greatly from it. And we certainly plan to continue collaborating. So I'm gonna, I guess, send it over your way, Stephanie. I'm gonna stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll have time for questions at the end. And I'm going to turn it over now to Raf, who has been collaborating with Mrs. McKinnon and her students for several years. And then Alex will talk about her more recent collaborations.
Hi, everyone. I also feel like every time I hear those poems, I get, I feel so inspired by those students. It's really been, every year has been a great group of students, and it's really, I don't know, such a privilege to have worked with them. I'm definitely going to miss that from my Bates experience. But I guess timeline wise, I started working with Patty in the spring of 2018. And that was also the same time that I started taking a class called Theory and Practice of Writing and Tutoring. And so as a part of that class, we had a community engaged placement, and I was fortunate enough to be placed with Patty McKinnon. And I think it was the first time that I was in an English language learners classroom, and it was happening simultaneously while I was trying to learn tutoring pedagogy and learn more about languages and how to be a supportive instructor, but also a learner and a listener. So it happened during Bates short term, which is just like an intensive month period. And I felt like there was a lot of growth and reflection that needed to happen, which is sort of what I spent the following year doing when Patty went back to South Korea. And I worked with other English language learners in other classrooms. And then the following year for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Stephanie, Patty, a few other Bates students, and I created this partnership. The first round of it was for I Am poems, and I still remember those poems, which were wonderful. And it really struck me how much the students valued the opportunity to talk about themselves. At first, it seemed like they were a little unsure how much they could open up or how much they were supposed to share. And I think, the scaffolding the writing process along with the emotional process of them going through like their own identity. I mean, they're high school students, and there's so much that they're learning about themselves. And it was really special to be a part of the process while they worked through those things. And so that also inspired my interest in community justice and language justice. Um, and I think as these projects progressed over time and the collaboration continued, it sparked, I think, other conversations also on Bates campus, and I think created more like a stronger bond between the education system in Lewiston and the Bates campus, or at least plenty of the students that I was working with also were placed in other ELL classrooms, which has just been such a great partnership. And I think pointed out some of the things that Patty also mentioned about getting to know your students. I think like for Bates students, getting to know your neighbors and getting to know Lewiston residents was really important. Because I mean, I like walk down the street and I run into students and I still, remember their poems or remember writing with them, which has been great. And I think personally has really shaped my whole Bates career and influenced my major here and ultimately my thesis, and prompted me to engage with some projects with multilingual students at Bates, which is another population of students that I don't think are always supported in the ways that like these writing activities can show how empowering it is to use code meshing and to use these different writing and inclusive writing practices in the classroom. So I think between like the tutoring side of things with tutoring pedagogy, the experience that I had with Patty in her classroom, and then also getting studying linguistics and code meshing and learning from Stephanie, I think bringing all of those things together and then witnessing and listening to these poems has just been I honestly I thought about ways to describe it, but I just genuinely appreciate all of it. And I think those poems were honest tributes to the students. I think they really I still remember working with Arcilla, and she got really emotional, and I think it really hit me about how much these meant to them. And I think it's something that they can be really proud of and something that they can point to, and they can say that they've participated in an MLK Day at Bates and workshops and now this conference. And I think it's a way of pushing out this work, but also pushing out the individual students' talents. So yes, I could keep talking about it, but I think that's all for me. And thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you so much, Raf. Alex, will you comment a bit on your experience?
Yes, of course. So I did not work directly with Lewiston students in this capacity, but I've worked with many of them more in an art space. So when I was at Bates, I majored in dance and psychology. However, I did help with the facilitation when we were presenting this work last year on MLK Day. And to Raf's point, there are no words to describe the energy that was in that room, but I'll quickly talk about like my perspective on language diversity and what can be gained from students' works and from a developmental perspective. So I think for all of us, we understand how writing is powerful and it really unites us. And I think it's also an opportunity for students, specifically, youth of color, to fellowship through shared experiences. And our identities are complex. And when we think about intersectionality as like interlocking systems of oppression, there's no way that we can't empower our students to write about their most full and authentic selves. And language diversity for me, I think it should be centered in curriculum. Our classrooms, our pedagogies, our practices should be reflective of the individuals experiencing them. So for me, I'm half Jamaican, half Nigerian, and one way which I display that through my writing is being really clear and concise, because it makes me remind me of my own mother and how she's very strict with me. And it comes from more of a Caribbean background. And I think if we can find ways that students can locate that culture and implement it into their writing, it promotes their well-being and it promotes the learning in the classroom. And I think my experience listening to the poems the first time, I was able to hear, positives, and I was also able to hear some negatives and the realities of a lot of our Black and Brown children, essentially. And I think the whole experience was an intergenerational one, because we have teenagers and then we have college students, and really listening to teenagers and talking about their experiences. And although there may be an age difference, when we think about Black languages and we think about those shared experiences, we all can relate to it regardless of our age. And I think it was an excellent way for Bates and Lewiston students to really collaborate with one another. And I think, again, I was also able to reflect on my own experience as well. And they inspired me to really stay in my solitude and be okay with my identity. And I think that, young people are powerful, and we can learn a lot about ourselves when we look at what they're writing, what they're talking about. And then one thing that I'll say is, this is not related, but I think, when I was doing workshops with Lewiston students, young girls of color in the dance space, they were and we would have conversations about their culture. A lot of the same themes would come up when same themes came up in terms of the writing activities. Like, this is where they're from, this is the way I move, this is the way I dance. And I think that as educators, if we can just, again, locate what those distinct differences are and what makes them unique, it really allows them to feel centered. And I think that really promotes their well-being and the learning in the classroom. And I think from a research and development standpoint, I think that educators who are committed, to learning and the growth of students, we need to interrogate whiteness and Eurocentric standards of writing and speaking, and the construction of it, and how it maintains and permeates academia. And I think, especially when we work with Black and Brown youth, for sure. But I think overall, there's no words to describe the experience. The energy in the room was powerful. Family was there. And I don't know, it was just, you would have to be there. And I think that this activity, if it can be implemented in any space, it should. That interracial energy is one of a kind. So I really am blessed to have experienced that. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to do a quick screen share and hopefully for 3 minutes, provide an overview of some of the research that led me to seek out these partnerships. 3 minutes. Cut me off after 3 minutes so that we can have time for questions. But I lost what I really want to show you, which is this. So April Baker Bell recently published a book, Linguistic Justice, and in the foreword to that book, Geneva Smitherman poses the question: if African-American language is systematic, rules-governed, and functional, as the voluminous research over several decades has established, then why is it continuing to be stigmatized and disrespected? The answer, which April Baker Bell reveals in her research, is racism, and particularly anti-Black racism, which Smitherman addresses when she continues: teachers, language researchers, educational administrators, public policy theorists, critical race theorists, community activists, parents, high school youth, all need to be involved in the quest for linguistic justice, anti-racist pedagogy, and the disruption and destruction of anti-Black racism. And I hope the poems you heard and the reflections you heard help you see one way forward, which is by using multilingual writing and code meshing in the work that we assign. I want to take us back to 1974. So that's almost 50 years ago. And that's when NCTE, which is the larger organization of which MCELA is a regional organization of, published a statement, Students' Rights to Their Own Language. And back then in 1974, the research was unequivocal that the various languages and dialects that students, particularly Black students, bring to school follow patterns and follow rules, and the rules of the standard white conventional English that we have naturalized are just a product of geography, technology, and racism. So that was almost 50 years ago, but we haven't gotten very far in terms of changing practices to line up with this research. One of the reasons why is that the most dominant pedagogy that came out of this research was called code switching, which offered some spaces for students to bring in their various dialects and then ask them to switch to the standard for their formal writing. I was trained to use code switching as a teacher, and that's the practice I followed for many years until I came across research on translingualism and code meshing. Very, very briefly, translingualism looks at how changes in technology, migration, and linguistics have showed us that communication acts transcend individual languages and transcend words. So the poems that you heard are communication acts that bring in multiple languages. The dance that Alex was talking about transcends words. And we're in this moment of heightened attention to multimodal communication, and translingualism and code meshing allow us to harness the various literacies that students bring to school, making space for their authentic selves and for their social and emotional development. I'm going to very quickly go through back to April Baker Bell. This quote is important to me because she is writing about code meshing and enacting code meshing in it. Despite decades of research on Black language, its survival since enslavement, and its linguistic imprint on the nation and the globe, Black people and Black language scholars keep having to remind you all that it is a legit language. And I want to dwell on this for a minute because it shows the intentionality that went into the construction of this sentence. When I talk about code meshing, the first reaction I often hear is we can't just let anything go. And code meshing isn't saying not to pay attention to language. It's saying pay more attention to language and do this from a standpoint of humility and understanding that the linguistic conventions that many of us have become accustomed to are just a small slice of the larger spectrum of languages that are important for their beauty and for the knowledge that they can bring to our discussions. So there are links to all of this. I'll share these slides with you later. And I want to very quickly close by talking about community writing. I'm part of an organization called the Coalition for Community Writing, and their work is what motivated me to seek out partnerships beyond Bates. And as I'm moving to Searsport into a high school setting, I'm going to continue to seek out these partnerships. And at the end of this workshop, I'm going to invite you to share your information so we can continue to harness these intergenerational and intercultural and interracial relationships to learn more about our neighbors here in Maine. I just said a lot. We all did. And so I'd like to pause for your questions.
I'm just thinking about what you were just talking about and creating communities and connections, because I teach in a very similar area to where you're now moving, and it's hard to find them locally. You're muted though.
here's what we learned this year is we can do this over Zoom. And so there's UMA in Rockland. There are the various UMean campuses, all of which are full of college writing students, many of whom would be eager to meet the students in the smaller communities and write together with them. And so I'm not exactly sure what the structure is going to look like, but I am convinced it's possible. And those of you who were participating in the Zoom workshops can speak to how that worked. I had students in some other classes too over the course of this year who partnered with Patty and her students. They weren't available to participate today, and I have their reflections, and they learned so much from doing this work. And Patty's students, I believe, learned quite a bit too. And so they really are these reciprocal relationships that form. And the work of teaching writing is labor intensive. And the work of teaching writing with attention to anti-racism asks us to labor more. There's emotional labor involved. There's learning about different languages and different dialects. We can't just use rubrics and conventional editing symbols. And so bringing in college students to distribute this labor as listeners to support our growing multilingual high school population is one way of making this work doable, I would say.
I want to just emphasize what Raph was saying, because with the poem that she was referring to with Darcilla had a lot she wanted to express. She was dealing with a lot of emotions and she really wanted to get it on paper. And in order to do that, it required a lot of listening and a lot of time of communicating verbally before she could begin writing about it. So Raph mentioned that, and I thought that was an excellent example.
I'm putting a link to the Spark presentation in the chat. And in that presentation are links to Patty's material, as well as to all of the scholars and researchers whose work I mentioned.
Stephanie, I also would like to mention that there are a couple of resources that people have put in the chat room.
Oh, great.
We've been watching the chat room, but yes, there's some good resources. So that would be nice if we could share those resources as well.
When I get the recording of this, I will also save, I think the chat comes with it. And I'm also putting the Google Doc here for anyone who, if you go to the last page of the Google Doc, there's a place for you to write your name and your contact information, as well as a couple of notes about what you might be interested in if you would like to continue to collaborate on this topic. I've been doing work on language diversity for 20 years, and I am always learning and always humbled. Other ideas for additional resources or questions?
I was thinking about the I am from poem, and I've used it with my students, and occasionally I come across a student who doesn't want to go there. They're from too much trauma. And so alternatives to that, things I've tried are where I'm going, where I am, but also considering that not everyone wants to write about their families and their past experience. That's not a question.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think framing it as where I'm from and allowing students to talk about hobbies and athletics as well as family can create space for those who are not in a space to reckon with that trauma. I think that's really important. We're at 5 o'clock. I have a closing prompt for us if you care to join in. So I like to think of all of us as neighbors here in Maine, and I am always curious about learning more about my neighbors. I hope that listening to this poetry helped you understand our neighbors a little bit better. And if you'd like to write in closing, please do. If not, enjoy the beautiful sunshine out there Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, all of you as well, for taking the time to pull this together for us.
I should add that April Baker Bell will be speaking by Zoom on Friday at noon, along with Genevieve Garcia de Mueller and Paul K. Matsuda, all on the topic of language justice. And that's from 12 to 2. And if anyone's interested, please let me know. I'll happily share the Zoom information. And I've been up since about 4 in the morning, and so my creative juices are I've gotten when we listen to our neighbors, we ... I like what you said, Patty. We become more open. We're less alone. We build community.
That was good collaborative writing between Ralph and Stephanie.
We didn't even rehearse that. It just happened.
So we're at time. I really could stay here and listen and talk about this forever, but I want to be respectful of other people's obligations. But hopefully you clicked on the link to the Google document if you're interested in talking about this more. We can talk more another time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.